Can always tell when it's later because there's one cat, just the one. Um, Usually later on at night, Bear's already gone into the bedroom. She'll every now and then come out and yell at me like, hey, it's time to go to bed. And it is, but that's because it was a long day today. And now we're up to the power rankings because it's Saturday night. So what better thing for me to be doing than the power rankings? And today's power rankings, it's funny because all week there's been a lot of movement, and then I look on Saturday and go, and we're kind of back where we started. Kind of sort of back where we started. I'm of course wearing the LA Kings jersey that they wore tonight for um, the big outdoor game that they won, the Stadium Series game in Colorado, which was a fantastic spectacle. And yeah, it was a pretty nice looking game too. So while the jerseys and the helmets were odd, paired up against each other, they looked okay. And I have to say that this jersey, the biggest fear you could have with this jersey was they would have white shorts, which the Toronto Maple Leafs did with their all white back in their stadium game, and it just looked weird. But the black shorts broke it up nicely, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. So that being said, let's get to tonight's power rankings. Number 31, and these guys have been in the same spot most of the year. They moved out of 31 4 weeks ago, and they're back. The Detroit Red Wings are back in 31st. So they moved up to 29th to the point where I actually put it on my Instagram, and I was like, hey, check this out. They're 29th. And the Kings were 31st. And it felt like, maybe Detroit's got a chance this week. And then the rest of the week happened. And coming into tonight, I was like, nah, they're back in 31st. They're back where they kind of belong. And it's troubling and it's upsetting and all of that wonderful stuff, but yeah, they're back where I think they belong, which is kind of too bad because they had a good start to the week. Number 30, dropping one spot from where they were last week, the Ottawa Senators. So for the Senators, another one of those weeks where Ottawa, Detroit, they are down there, and they're going to probably remain down there the rest of the year. You've got to think that between now and not this Monday coming up, but next Monday, there will be some selling of players by Ottawa. Detroit, if they can find takers on some of their expiring contracts, sure. If they can't, that's not a big deal either. Yzerman's plan is long-term, not right now kind of thing. If he can add prospects and draft picks, he'll do it, but I don't think he's overly concerned. So, yeah, Ottawa number 30. Number 29, moving up one spot from last week. Yes, LA was last. They were last on Sunday. They fight their way back up to 29th tonight. The LA Kings, decent enough week. And again, better than these two. So, faint praise is what it is. But for the Kings, they show they can play spoiler. They did it against the Avalanche tonight, which I think stunned Avalanche fans and the Avalanche team itself. But Jonathan Quick apparently looks out there and goes, hey, this is a big game. Look, huge stadium, lots of fans. I'm going into playoff mode. Playoff mode Jonathan Quick is fantastic, and that's what he looked like tonight. So we'll see whether or not that carries over. Number 28, dropping one spot from last week. Rough week for New Jersey, wasn't it? So yeah, the New Jersey Devils, they dropped one spot to 28th. Yes, this is actually, if you look at this is the logo from before. This is the red and green logo. This isn't red and black. Again, from a distance, it'll still look red and black, but it's the red and green logo. So I thought, yeah, I'll use that one. I'll throw that one on the board. New Jersey, yeah, long week. Really no other way to put it. They're basically stuck where they're at, and we'll see whether or not they move up again. But they drop one spot, and that's after the week before they were 29th. The week before that, they were 28th. So yeah, they've been in and around this spot for a while. Number 27, up one spot from last week, Anaheim. And what hurt Anaheim is the Calgary game. That'll hurt any team. That was really a kick in the teeth. And again, they weren't going to get back into contention, but that was a horrible game for them. And their overall numbers not really all that good. And so Anaheim's season to forget becomes more and more forgetful. So yeah, we'll see where they end up at the end of the year. We are 7 weeks out from the end of this. We are 7 power rankings from the end of the power rankings for the season. Isn't that weird? Yeah. Because once playoff time rolls around, things get crazy on the channel. So there's no power rankings during the playoffs. There's no point. I tried it 2 years ago, and it really was pointless. So I didn't keep it up last year, and it didn't really make a difference. Number 26, same spot as last week, is Buffalo. The Buffalo Sabres, some good results and some bad along the way as well. Really, for Buffalo, the problem that they're having is they're running out of time. They're running out of time. So even if they did go on a little bit of a run, I'm talking like if they went like 5-2 in their next 7, that's not going to get it done. They're really in a bind, and so we'll see what they do at the deadline. They've already started making some moves. Bogosian being waived seemed to surprise some people who weren't Buffalo fans. I wasn't necessarily that surprised. And what surprises me more than anything is when a guy's on waivers and I see people on the internet saying, hey, our team should take a flyer on that guy. And I'm thinking, why? Especially in Bogosian's case with his cap hit, and just with the fact that his play has gone as far downhill as it has. It's a matter of what team would want to pick him up and see him as an upgrade over what they have on the ice. And and that, again, with that cap hit, it makes it really, really difficult. So after this season, maybe next year he finds himself a spot somewhere, but he's got some thinking to do. Apparently he hasn't reported to Rochester. He's thinking about it. So we may see a sudden retirement out of a guy or something along those lines. Number 25, dropping 4 spots from last week, the Canadiens. Now, the Canadiens didn't drop early in the week. They didn't. They were losing games that weren't dropping, but what happened is, while they're losing games, other teams were winning and jumping past them. So again, the Montreal Canadiens had a rough week. They had some very tough competition, and this is kind of where they're at now. And with Shea Weber being out for the next 4 to 6 weeks, the odds of them making the playoffs, it gets leaner and leaner. And now we're up to 4 games in a row where Kovalchuk doesn't have a point. Kovalchuk's value has to be kind of lagging a little bit now, because if teams are paying attention over the last week and a half, they're thinking, well, Kovalchuk started not scoring again. This is kind of a pattern with him. I don't know. Maybe we can figure something else out, and they look in another direction. So for Montreal, things are getting kind of dicey right now. I think they're better off just to keep Kovalchuk rather than go for that trade. But watch for headlines on all these different websites and all kinds of speculation on YouTube and on TSN and Sportsnet about where's Covey going to go, what are they going to get back for Covey, and then watch at the deadline as it's not what people think. Number 24, same spot as last week, San Jose. San Jose's issue is a simple one. So they had a decent enough week, but to move them past other teams, I have to look and go, okay, I think they're playing better than these teams. And right now, I don't really see that. I see a team that has stolen a couple of games. They've played well enough to maintain their position. They do pass Montreal on the board. But I don't see a team that's threatening for a playoff spot. They just lost Erik Karlsson. They still don't have Hurdle. They don't have Couture. Their odds are slim that they're going to pull out of this and go on a real run here. Now, tonight's shutout by Jones, if that proves to be a sustainable thing, they will move up next week. But for this week, they've stayed in the same spot. Number 23, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Minnesota. For Minnesota, it's been tricky. They've won their share of games. Their record over their last 10 is pretty good. But tonight's dud this afternoon's dud against San Jose is emblematic of a problem here, where Jones looked really good, or was Minnesota shooting that bad? Probably a little bit of both. And so for Minnesota, a game where they really desperately needed it, they didn't get it, and now they're 5 points back of a playoff spot. Coach has been fired. Coach got fired because the team doesn't look very motivated. Zucker got traded for the same reason. And Minnesota looks like they're headed towards full-on selling. So tonight's team looked kind of defeated at certain points of the game. And Dean Evison now is the interim coach behind the bench. I don't know whether he stays into next season or if he's just purely an interim and then they look for somebody new going into next season. But it definitely feels like Minnesota's kind of falling out of it. Number 22, moving up 1 spot from last week, is Arizona. Now, I flirted with having Arizona higher up on the board, but when a team's won, 3 out of 12? Right? So they're in a playoff spot, but the team right behind them, which is Nashville, Nashville has 4 games in hand on them. So the fact that Nashville has 4 games in hand and they're only 3 points back, that's an issue. They have to hope that Nashville loses some games. And Nashville has a game tomorrow against St. Louis, a team they haven't lost against all year. So they have to hope that things go bad for Nashville from here and they stop this turnaround. And at the same time, they have to hope that the win they got tonight against Washington, it points to something more sustainable. Arizona, they're teetering. They're teetering. If they'd lost that game against the Capitals tonight, odds are they're 24th. I likely would have bumped them down to here if they'd lost that game as well. They win it, so they move up to 22nd. Number 21, dropping from 17 last week. It was a rough road trip for them. They do come out of it with a huge victory in Calgary, 8-4, which I think said just as much about Calgary's problems as it said anything good about what's going on with Chicago in this game, right? So it's probably a little bit of both. Was Chicago that good? Was Calgary that bad? Yes, is your answer. Yeah, your answer is probably yes. So for Chicago, it was a rough week. They got robbed in Vancouver. They had the loss in Edmonton as well. So overall, it's been a rough week. And now tomorrow they're playing in Winnipeg, so we'll see how that goes for them, and how that goes for Winnipeg, because Winnipeg, of course, needs victories because some of these teams are gaining on them. So yeah, it's an interesting picture that we're starting to see in the West, and Chicago is still in it, but some of those losses this week, it's just it piles up. They had 5 losses in a row, including the 2 overtime losses going into tonight's game. So it's been a rough stretch for them. Number 20, moving up from 25 last week, and they're not dead. The New York Rangers, they're not dead. Now this logo is from 1963-64. So for anybody who's going to go, well, wait, that's not Rangers. Yeah, it's Rangers. Yeah, it is. So the New York Rangers move up 5 spots. Now, in terms of their highest they've been all year, the highest they got was 16th. You know what? These guys can get there. This team, the way they played this week, really, really strong week for them overall. They're part of the reason why Montreal did actually take that drop overall. The Rangers, what a solid week. And now tomorrow they're at home against the Boston Bruins. If they can win at home against the Bruins, we've got something happening here. And Buchnevich, Shesterkin, D'Angelo, Fox, Georgiev. Does Georgiev stay? Does he still get traded? Georgiev played fantastic yesterday, so I think Georgiev's earned himself a spot. And I think there is an uncomfortable question in the goal, and we're going to see how that plays out, I think, in the offseason. They may not go away from this 3-goaltender rotation until the offseason, when maybe they keep Shesterkin, maybe they keep Georgiev, and maybe it is Lundqvist that goes. Maybe Larry Brooks is right, at which point we will all get in the fetal position and wonder what the world is coming to if Larry Brooks is right. He speculated that maybe they buy out the last year of Lundqvist's contract and keep Georgiev and Shesterkin instead. So, number 19, moving up 1 spot from last week, is Winnipeg. Up and down week for Winnipeg, and they can't afford to remain in this mediocre, middle-of-the-road spot because the Rangers are close to passing them. Rangers have another week like they just did. They will pass the Winnipeg Jets. And for the Jets, they need to be better more consistently. Right now, they're sitting behind 2 teams for a playoff spot. They have to pass Nashville, and they have to pass Arizona to get into a playoff spot. It's going to be a tricky situation for them. They do need the whole Bufflin thing to get just cleared up. It should just go away so that they have the cap space to add. I mean, they've got Little now. They can just throw him on season-ending LTIR. That'll help clear up some space, but they do need something. The Winnipeg Jets need something. I think they need at least 1, maybe 2 blue liners, and maybe a backup goaltender as well to replace Brossoit. Brossoit's overall numbers haven't been very good this year, so we'll see what they do, but for now I have them at 19. Number 18, same spot as last week. Calgary. So they lose against LA. They destroy Anaheim, and then they come home and they get destroyed by Chicago. Overall, I think I've got them in the right spot. I have them outside the top 16 because I don't think they're playing well enough to be a playoff team. Although right now they are a playoff team. This is what's concerning in the West. There are going to be at least probably two teams that struggle their way into the playoffs, and you can turn it on in the playoffs, but we'll see how that works out. Because again, people in the East are not going to be happy if Calgary kind of staggers their way into the playoffs and hey, look, they're good and they win a couple of rounds while one of the teams with a better record than them misses the playoffs in the East. Watch for that to be a concern. But for Calgary, they're in it. They're in the playoffs in the West. We'll see if they can stay in again. They have to watch for Nashville. They have to watch for Winnipeg and potentially Minnesota. And coming out of tonight, they had a chance to put Chicago away, and they didn't do it. So Chicago's still in this. And for Calgary, they are still right down there. So there seems to be a little bit of a separation between Vancouver, Edmonton, and Vegas, and then the two teams chasing them. But we'll see if that maintains itself a week from now or if things change again. Number 17. Moving up from 19 last week. It's been a gradual move up for Nashville. The Nashville Predators are playing well. And they're playing well enough that this gradual climb is, I think, sustainable. So 2 weeks ago, they're 21. 3 weeks ago, they're 23. 4 weeks ago, they're 21. They were 19 5 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, they were 16. So this is the highest they've been in 6 weeks. And that makes sense because I think they're playing the best hockey they have in about 6 weeks. They do look like they should be able to get into the playoffs. Again, the 4 games in hand they have on Arizona, all they have to do is win 2 of them and then have a decent record from there. And they should be able to take Arizona out with the way Arizona's been playing over the last, I'll say, month. So for Nashville, things are a lot rosier right now than they were. They do need to be better at home. This is a problem. They haven't been very good at home. They've been pretty darn good on the road, and now they have the St. Louis Blues again tomorrow. So we'll see how that game goes for them. But I have them at 17. Number 16, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Florida. The Florida Panthers, they've lost 4 in a row at home. They're struggling, which is probably an understatement with Florida. I don't know if these guys can make the playoffs. Again, they find themselves below the playoff line in the East. They're not likely to catch up to Columbus or Philadelphia for a wild card spot. There is still the chance to catch Toronto, which is not that far off, but they seem to find a way to shoot themselves in the foot. And Toronto, it looks like, is starting to put it together. Toronto's starting to figure things out. Rumors that Jake Muzzin's agreed on an extension of 4 years with Toronto. So the doom and gloom of Toronto seems to be lifting. And for Florida, it kind of seems to be back, where Bobrovsky's numbers continue to be less than what you want for $10 million. And just Florida in general doesn't quite seem to have it. Number 15, moving up 1 spot from last week. They would have moved up more, but that loss to Vegas hurt them. The Islanders, and from one night to the next, you don't know what you're getting necessarily with the Islanders. They've been shut out in back-to-back games. So the shutout loss against Nashville is concerning. And then a shutout loss against Vegas is equally concerning. Lou Lamoriello needs to go out and get somebody. This is a team that does need more help. And they need scoring. It's the same thing that they've needed all year. The problem is that their goaltending isn't bailing them out. They're not getting that goal here and there that they were getting early in the year at the right time. Those key goals from all various players, they're just not getting that now. So the Islanders really desperately need something more than what they've been getting to date. So we'll see if they get that at the deadline. Number 14, same spot as last week. Not a whole lot's changed with Toronto. As I said, they find themselves ahead of Florida. They should make the playoffs. Do they end up against Boston? They probably hope not. But Boston's only a point ahead of Tampa, and Tampa's on a 10-game winning streak, so you never know. They might end up playing against Boston in the first round again. Now, here's the funny thing. If they do it for the 3rd year in a row, I would actually kind of hope Toronto would win it, because I'm scared of that narrative. If 3 years in a row they lose to Boston, it gets aggravating. So on some level, I would actually be thinking, I hope Toronto does it this year, because it would be nice for the narrative to change. The problem is I don't know that their blue line is good enough to win a round. It's the same problem they've had the first 2 years, and now I don't know. I mean, they don't have Jake Gardiner for a game seven, but again, I don't know. Do they get to a game seven? Number 13, major drop from 7 to 13 is St. Louis. So the St. Louis Blues with a 6-point drop. It's quite the drop for St. Louis. And again, this was a really bad week for St. Louis, emotionally, of course, with Jay Bouwmeester and everything that's going on. But on the board, I have to reflect that the team just hasn't played very well lately. And the loss in Vegas, 6-5, was a really sloppy affair. And now today, against Nashville, again, it's kind of a sloppy game. Now they're going to Nashville. Can they emerge on the other side of that with a victory? I don't know. I'm starting to see cracks in the St. Louis Blues right now that we haven't really seen since, I want to say, last December. I'm not talking about this season. I'm talking about the season before they started winning, when they were down near and at the bottom of the league. This has started to remind me of some of that. Things are just going kind of wrong for them. They're not losing by a ton for the most part, but they're not winning. So they're losing close games. They're just not winning their games, and it has become problematic. So St. Louis needs to turn things around, and for that reason, they've dropped a lot this week. Number 12. Same spot as last week. I think I've got them in the right spot, and that's Vancouver. I know. Vancouver fans are going to be upset saying, oh, you've got us too low. But I think I got Vancouver in right about the right spot. Markstrom stole that game against Chicago. So that was all nice and fine and dandy, but you can't say the Canucks played well. That was just Markstrom. And in general this week, while they played well, I still don't know whether or not Vancouver, in my eyes, is a team that wins around in the playoffs. It's going to be very interesting to see who they match up with should they get there. I really hope they do. They currently sit above that playoff line by 6 points, I believe. So they should be able to make the playoffs, which would be a huge victory just in and of that. That would silence some Jim Benning critics, although not all. There will still be some that even if the Canucks ended up with like that draft pick they gave Tampa, even if it was like 23rd or 24th overall, people would be like, oh, that's too good. That draft pick to Tampa, that's going to be, that could be another Brock Besser. That could be Pasternak. And so people will just ignore what JT Miller's done for this team. But JT Miller's been a huge... I would not be surprised if at the end of the season, Markstrom is the team MVP and JT Miller's number 2 on that list. That would not surprise me. With Quinn Hughes maybe being right up there, 3rd or 2nd. The two of them jockeying for 2nd, basically, is what I'm saying. It's been amazing. And I know people are going to say, what about Pettersson? I'd have Pettersson probably 4th right now, and I mean that. It's been a pretty solid all-around effort. Number 11, dropping 2 spots from where they were last week, but still, Vegas looks pretty good. Number 11 is a pretty good spot for them, and again, being in and around the top 10 is important. I do think Vegas is one of the best teams in their division. That's the reason that they're only 1 point behind Vancouver. Vancouver does have, I believe, 1 game in hand on Vegas, for what it's worth. But, Vegas... tonight was an important game for Marc-Andre Fleury. It was an important game for Vegas. Again, that win over St. Louis, that was one sloppy game. Now, they outshot St. Louis by more than a 2-1 average, but tonight's game against the Islanders was, to me, a better victory. May not have been as exciting, definitely wasn't as high scoring, but to me it was a better victory. So yeah, number 11, Vegas. Number 10, dropping 2 spots from last week. I didn't drop Carolina any further because I do think Carolina, while they are below the line, and I know that's where the problem's going to be, is that they're below the line. I still think Carolina's playing pretty well. And hey, with those 69 points, they would be first in the Pacific Division. So this is where things get tricky. The Metro has been excellent. You've got Metro Division teams kind of dominating right now in the NHL, even though when we saw West versus East tonight, things didn't turn out quite as well for the East as one might have expected. Carolina I have in 10th place. We'll see how they do down the stretch, whether or not they get into the playoffs. I would think either the Islanders or Columbus could fall out and give Carolina that spot. Right now they're below that line, but not by very much. Number 9, moving up 1 spot from last week, Edmonton. So for the Oilers, good week. Good finish to the week. I didn't penalize them for losing to Tampa, because why would I? I didn't penalize them for not having Cassian or McDavid, because again, why would I do that? My power rankings don't care who's in the lineup and who isn't. That does not reflect in anything. So for the Oilers, they move up this week despite the guys they're missing. And they only have 6 more games now until they get Cassian back. So their first game without Cassian was actually okie dokie. And Kyler Yamamoto is doing a great job. Kyler Yamamoto has been fantastic. 17 points in 17 games for him. And of course, Draisaitl with 92 points, not too shabby himself. The Draisaitl conversation is going to be out there. I still think McDavid's their best player, because McDavid is absolutely sensational at everything he does. But Draisaitl is an excellent player in his own right. Think along the lines of what Malkin and Crosby have been to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I don't like to make that comparison, because Malkin and Crosby have won a few Stanley Cups. And then there will be people mentioning, well, they haven't won anything yet in Edmonton, so you can't make that comparison. And they have a point, though they haven't had the team behind them that Crosby and Malkin had to win those Stanley Cups. Number 8. Dropping out of the first row. They've been number 4 for 2 weeks, number 3 the week before, 5, 4, 2. So Washington hasn't been out of the top row in a while. It's been months, and they've earned it. They've earned this drop. Losing against Arizona, 3 games in a row now. They've been waiting to get a goal for Ovechkin. It does feel like it's affecting him. It feels like it's affecting the team. It feels like it's affecting things in general. That's a problem. That's a problem. The Washington Capitals are in some serious danger, because while they're still first in their division, Pittsburgh has erased their lead for the most part, and they're kind of lucky that the Islanders have had their stagger along the way as well, as has Columbus this past week, because Washington is not playing really, really sound hockey right now. They're not playing like they were a few weeks ago. Number 7. Moving up from 11 last week, so they're back in the top row for the first time in a while. Philadelphia was last in the top row 6 weeks ago. They were number 7. Now they're back up to number 7. They're back up to number 7 for a simple reason. They're winning on the road again. That's all it is. If Philadelphia can win on the road, they're one of the better teams in the league. Their road record was abysmal, and it killed them on the power rankings. Now that they're back to playing well on the road, brings them right back up into the top row. The Philadelphia Flyers right now with 71 points. They have a wild card spot. They're 1 point behind the Islanders. They're within striking distance, sure, of the Capitals, although 8 points back is tricky with 20-some games left. But, for Philadelphia, this has been a very successful season already, I believe. And if they make the playoffs, and it looks like right now they should, then that makes it even more of a success. What they do in the playoffs after that, who knows? They're a tremendous wild card in more meanings than just having a wild card spot. I think they could have a great first round and knock a team out, or they could go out in 4 straight. I have no idea what to expect from the Philadelphia Flyers. Number 6. These guys stay in the same spot as last week. They had a rough week, but their goaltending is still steady, and they had a loss that I thought Kev Lennox was kind of on the hook for. So, for Columbus, this is one of those benefit of the doubt weeks. I do think that they're playing better than the Capitals right now overall. And for that reason, I have them still at 6. But I want to see more out of them this week, or they're going to drop. So, number 6 for Columbus, who right now are tied for that wild card spot with Philadelphia. We'll see how that goes for them, because they're only 2 points ahead of Carolina. So very tightly bunched together Metro Division. Look, Metro, 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 Metro. And yeah, that's 4 already in the top 10. So yeah, the Metro Division's been pretty good. They're not bad. They're pretty good division. The lowest ranked Metro team here, New Jersey at 28th. And then you have to look all the way up to 20th to find the Rangers for the next lowest. So they're a pretty strong division overall. Number 5. And moving up 8 spots from last week. And this is one of those market corrections. Dallas is back. And what's scary about Dallas is that they're their scoring has got together. So now Jamie Benn's got it. So Jamie Benn had a pretty good week. And now at the end of the week, so did Tyler Seguin. So Seguin and Benn have put it together. They're still getting the odd goal and point here and there from guys like Hintz, Foxa, guys that they need to keep producing. Heiskanen's been playing well, though the points haven't been there and their goaltending remains strong. Benn and Seguin being back means, Dallas is dangerous. Dallas right now sits only 1 point out of first in their division. So for anybody who goes, well, why is Dallas so high up? Yeah, Dallas is only 1 point behind St. Louis now, and they're ahead of Colorado. So they're legit, and they're ready to perhaps win this division. And who knows? I remember before the season, people talked about them being contenders, and I said they're not a contender. I may very well end up being wrong. By the end of the season, I may agree that they are at the very least a contender. I won't say how strong a contender they are because I don't want to do that, but they could very well be seen as a contender when the playoffs start up. Number 4, moving up 1 spot from last week. Could have moved up 2, but the loss against LA hurt them. It's an outdoor game though, so while I give the Kings full props for that win, I try not to take, how do I put this? An outdoor game like that is kind of a one-off, right? So you're not going to play in that environment again. It was a unique scenario. I said in the review it felt like both teams were kind of sucking wind at the end of the game. Maybe it affected Colorado more than they thought. Maybe LA was doing some more work with oxygen than the Avs, if that's even allowed. I don't know. But, maybe the Kings were just more ready than they got credit for. And so the Avs suffered at the hands of it. It's a situation we're not going to see again. So I tried not to bump Colorado down as a result of the loss against LA, because even though LA is a team with a poor record, the Avalanche had a pretty good run lately. So I lean more towards that pretty good run they've had than this one game. Number 3, dropping 1 spot from last week because of the Detroit loss, and that's Boston. The Boston Bruins are number 3, and again, that Detroit loss hurt them. It hurt them early. They dropped to 4th during Sunday's action. Immediately, they dropped to 4th. Ended up back up to 3rd. They got their redemption with a win over Detroit today, and they played pretty well in between. So that one loss, it is what it is, but they're still number 1 in the NHL. They're not relying on overtime loss points anymore. They're still on 12, which is good because they were on pace for like 24 or 25. And so I'm quite happy with how they're playing right now. I think for Boston, this has been a really good run. And number 1 in the entire NHL is bizarre. I don't think they stay there. I think there's one team that probably passes them, maybe 2. One of the teams that could pass them, and they're number 2, they were number 3 last week, and that's Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh Penguins just continue to be so impressive despite injuries. It doesn't matter. Does anybody even notice Jake Gensel's not in the lineup? No. Zucker comes in and he fits because of course he does. And I think it says more about Crosby than it does about Zucker. No offense to Zucker, but Crosby over his entire career has kind of done this. Here's your new winger. Okay. And that winger gets like 20 goals, 30 goals. Or he scores on a 30-goal pace over a brief period because he's with Sid the Kid. I don't know. Crosby just has this ability, and basically it's, if you can stop right there with your stick out, I will hit the stick, you will get the goal, I will get the assist, we will get the victory, and you can make some extra money off of it. He's made a whole career off doing this, and he's still doing it. Crosby, arguably still the number 1 player in the NHL. It's an argument we can have till the end of the season and beyond into the summer. But Crosby is proving that he makes his line mates better. Which means number 1 for the 3rd week in a row. And how can you argue against Tampa? Tampa's won, 20 out of 23? Like it is some ridiculous number of wins these guys have. And they're going to end up with probably at least 50 overall. You got to think, 50 wins for them minimum? We're likely going to end up in a very similar position to last year, where the Tampa Bay Lightning are number 1 on my power rankings. They look great going to the playoffs. They're the number 1 team in the NHL. And then the playoffs. And then what? And that's the question I have for you guys. Which of the teams that are near the top of the board do you think 7 weeks from now, once we get into playoff time, are going to struggle, and which teams are going to be a surprise? So there you go. There's your power rankings for the week. Let me know your thoughts. I know you will. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for your time, for your attention, for hitting like and subscribe when you watch my videos. It means a lot, and I will talk to you again soon.